Hey everyone, my name is Daniel. This is an article read for the Don Jail out of Toronto. I hope you enjoy it. The Don Jail in Toronto is strong, imposing, and powerful. Words given to architect William Thomas in the 1850s. William was commissioned to build Toronto's jail to be known as the Don after the river. Who better than a master of Gothic style, responsible for the Niagara-on-the-Lake Courthouse, Toronto's St. Michael Cathedral, and St. Lawrence Hall, as well as the Brock's Monument and much more. In 1865, 5 years after his death, William's vision was realized in the Don Jail. Made to hold 276 prisoners. Then, as with many prisons of every generation, they'd break the rule by housing over 600 in the same space. It was justified as a short-term stay, and prisoners only subjected to the horror for a few days, but guess what? Then they break more promises, and most stayed up to 3 months. It's inhumane, reporter activists, politicians, and even prison guards working in the Don would all say. Conditions so bad, one day here was considered 3 days against their normal sentence. The Toronto Star expose of 2003 saw reporter Linda Diebel set up a tour. She would write about the experience and would say, "It's like walking into a madhouse from another century." Dramatic escape. What better criminal in the 1950s than a brash bank robber? Edwin Boyd met fellow inmate Lenny Jackson when locked together in the same cell. Lenny was tough and talked about it all the time, told people how he came face to face with a train, lost his leg, and that's why he had a prosthetic. Lenny trusted Edwin and was completely honest, opening up the fake leg and showing him the hacksaw inside. Soon Edwin and Lenny were joined by Willie Jackson, no relation to Lenny, and Steve Suchin to form the famous Boyd Gang. In 1951, they sawed through the jail cell bars to escape. Now just hold on for one moment and just think about this. Take a moment to picture the surroundings. The question has always been, how did they do it? Imagine the noise of the saw against the iron, the damage in the plain sight, and the other inmates watching on. Either the story is incorrect, or this is a complete testament to how lawless and unsupervised the Don was. The Boyd Gang, though, they did escape, following Edwin into numerous bank robberies lasting a few months. In early 1952, Edwin and Willie were caught and returned to the jail. Not long after, Steve and Lenny were pulled over by a Toronto officer in a routine stop. Steve shot the officer, who later died. They were later found and arrested for murder. All 4 men were returned to the Don Jail and, get this, put into the same cell. Shockingly, they escaped again only a couple months later. Toronto's mayor, Alan Lamport, publicly stated in its perfect way he said it. He said the jail is being run by a bunch of morons. Straight to the point. The police were smarter than that, though. Just a few days later, the gang were cornered inside an old barn in nearby Don Valley. Later that year, Steve and Lenny were hanged at the Don. Willie got 30 years and Edwin got 8 life sentences for being the mastermind. Didn't matter, though. Both men were released in the same year in 1966. Boyd lived all the way until 2002, when dying at the age of 88. Now, one reason why Edwin Boyd became the famed escape artist were those conditions at the Don Jail. You say it might have motivated him. Now, one of the quotes before returning to the Don in 1952 said it all. He told a reporter, "I'll saw my way out again if I have to spend another month inside that building." The hangings. 26 men were hanged inside the jail's gallows building. The last men hanged in Canadian history and at the Don were Ronald Turpin and Arthur Lucas, and then capital punishment was outlawed in Canada. Other men hanged at the Don Jail? George Bennett in 1880 for murdering local historic figure George Brown. John Boyd in 1908 for murdering a man on York Street over jealousy for a woman. Fred Lee Rice in 1905 for murdering a constable while being transferred to the Don. It was a carriage attacked from the side by an unknown rider who threw a bunch of guns inside. Rice got one of the guns and started firing. He hit a constable before being held down. and 2 other prisoners. One of them was killed, and the other survived, only to later commit suicide inside his cell. Roy Holtram and William McFadden in 1921 for shooting a drugstore owner during a robbery. Lenny and Steve in 1952 of the Boyd Gang for murdering that officer. And of course Ronald and Arthur in 1962 for murder and believed to be the final executions in Canada. The gallows were dismantled in 1977. The minister showed concern that pieces would gain infamy on an underground market, so out of respect he set up a ceremony. Only a few workers and activists were invited to swing sledgehammers against the wall and scaffolding until the entire structure was destroyed. Skeletons of a Shady Past. In 2007, graves were accidentally exposed during renovations. Asphalt torn up to reveal skeletal faces underneath, the remains of 9 condemned men, including George Bennett. Now, Bennett worked in the engine room of Toronto's Globe and Mail newspaper. He was fired for intemperance, which usually referred to drunkenness. Out of anger, Bennett returned to the office in March of 1880 with a gun. He shot the Globe's founder and famous Canadian historical figure George Brown in the thigh. The wound infected, Brown died, Bennett hanged. Playful Ghosts irritate guards. In 2005, the general space of the Don Jail was a gathering place for male inmates. To release tension, one may work the punching bag. One night, a guard heard an inmate yelling out from his cell. The prisoner pointed to a nearby punching bag and swore he heard a slap and the chains rattling. The guard looked around the bag, found nothing, and told the inmate, "Forget about it, go to sleep." Soon other inmates started complaining of the rattling chains. Someone's punching it. The fed-up guards turned on the lights for a full search and prisoner count. Everybody was in their cells. No one was missing. The lights shut down and the guards returned to their posts. Later on, during a routine walk, 2 guards heard a noise, a strong slap against leather and rattling chains. They ran to the punching bag and watched it slowly swinging. Lady of the Dawn. Walking the Don Jail can be stressful for any guard. Mostly it's the fear of escaping inmates causing violence. However, at the Don Jail, add ghosts to that list. In the 1890s, a female inmate fashioned a noose from her bedsheets inside of a tiny West Wing cell. She hanged herself and took her life, but never left. Guards walking the 2nd level at the entrance to the West Wing will see her. The Lady of the Dawn would appear, angry, pacing side to side, her white gown swaying. Journalist Tracy Tyler of the Toronto Star's Legal Affairs section put it best. Apparently she's violent due to being trapped in time. Wandering Inside Toronto's Don Jail by Carlos Sun. Now, he is a true believer of history. He created a vlog where he walks into the Don Jail, showing off the different areas. This is quite priceless because people are not allowed in the Don Jail anymore. It's as of 2016, they said that it was going to be worked into the hospital that's on the same grounds. So if you have a chance, if you're not in the article right now, I'll put a link in the video below on YouTube here. If you're in the article, you'll see it in front of you. At the bottom, there's a YouTube link showing Carlo Sun's tour.